Those Artemis 2 photos look sick. NASA gives us the data for free. So let's go, I'm gonna try to rebuild it in 3D. Luckily we can download all we need right from NASA's homepage. NASA provides a very numerous image library for you to explore and download for free. Link to the library in the description. After browsing some of the images, I decided on those 4 ones. I really wonder if we can create something similar that looks kinda real. Let's get started. Of course, I will use Blender as 3D software. Step 1. The data. Luckily, NASA provides everything you need and much more. CGI Move Kit, 27K textures. Amazing. Blue marble textures from column, masks for land and water, height maps to cloud images. Like a candy store on steroids for 3D nerds. So let's open up Blender. Since we're working with very high resolution textures, which is not too easy on the VRAM, I'm limiting the texture resolution to 4K for a better viewport performance. Now let's create a sphere and open up the shader editor. Create a new material and import our first texture. Every time we import such a high resolution texture, Blender will scale them for better performance. The UV sphere comes already UV unwrapped, so the texture fits right onto it. But when we have a closer look, we can see there's something wrong. Wrapping a 2D image on a sphere is a mathematical nightmare. The pre-unwrapped sphere consists of triangles on the top and the bottom. There's unfortunately no way that we can map the images onto it without losing image information. At least not with those triangles and the UV unwrapping.
Round 1. Fight!
There are 2 solutions as far as I'm aware. We could either use sphere projection from object texture coordinates, or we can use UV unwrapping, but we have to prevent those triangles. So we'll delete the top and bottom vertices. Select these new edge loops, extrude, right click, scale only on X and Y to 0. And now we have quads that all meet at this one point. Unfortunately, our spherical shape got some dents. We can fix this with a cast modifier and a factor of 1. The UVs are kind of distorted now, so we need to unwrap the UVs again. Luckily, Blender has some great tools for that. Select all. Go into front view, U for unwrapping menu, sphere projection. Now we will see a menu appearing on which we choose to view on equator. We can choose how to unwrap the poles. We want the fan version. And now we can unselect the correct aspect. Now the image is mapped correctly onto the sphere.
Revenge! Round 1. Fight! Terrific!
The Earth is around about 12,700 kilometers in diameter. So let's use that here. Let's use a real star map, also from NASA, for our world background. Damn, that's beautiful. Now we still need some light in here. We will create a sunlight. The distance to Earth is about 150 million kilometers. And we also create an empty circle for the orbit of the Sun around the Earth, if we decide to animate it. Okay, using this large scales clearly created some problems for larger distances. I think it's a floating point value error, so let's switch to a scale of 1 to 1000. Let's create a track 2 constraint for the sunlight to the Earth, so it's always pointing towards it. And let's also increase the brightness. Now we need to see the Sun from the Earth. So let's create a Sun mesh by duplicating the Earth mesh. The diameter is around 1,390,000 kilometers. We use a sun texture with an emission shader to make it bright enough for us to see from the Earth. And let's also increase the brightness. We also need to disable the shadow invisibility for the sunlight to not be affected by the sun. Let's focus back on Earth. Still a little empty here, so we will create the cloud layer next. Duplicate the Earth, scale it up a little, and now let's use NASA's cloud texture. The texture has some issues though, like cutoffs and repeating cloud formations. I used Photoshop with its amazing remove tool and clone stem tool and spent some hours finding and fixing these. Like this. And like that. And remove this one. And that one. We can use the texture with a ramp for the alpha channel. We can also add some bump. Before we continue, let's focus on the displacement. I want to use the same displacement texture for Earth and for cloud, so we prevent the clipping. By the way, in preparation for this video, I've seen a method from AlaskanFX for creating volumetric clouds from a cloud texture. I will leave a link to the video in the description. My focus is on recreating those Artemis photos though, so I won't use this method. This should be fine. The reason is definitely not that I found out about this after creating all the content for this video. I swear. Let's add the Earth topology maps as height map for our displacement. Just as a tip, if you use a math node and divide by a large number, you have a much more granular control over some values that are usually very finicky. To be able to use the same displacement for the cloud mesh, we will group these three and reuse them again here. And you can see the clipping issue resolved. We use the Earth Lights texture for the emission channel. a video from Blender Guru, who also created a tutorial for a realistic Earth, I got this mask trick. We use this to calculate a value from 1 to -1 from the direction of the sun lamp. With a mapping node, we can now control the light intensity and transition from the light to the dark side of the Earth. The dark side. For the atmosphere, we create a new sphere and make it slightly larger than the Earth. We will add volume scatter and volume absorption together. To create the fall-off, I use a quadratic sphere gradient, center it and double its size. So from the outer shell, which is 0, to the inner core, which is 1. We now need to map this fall-off to the part above the Earth floor. Now we only need to tinker with those color and density values, and we have a really good looking atmosphere. Have you noticed that these photos look different than what you see in many sci-fi movies? Why do they look like Christmas lights compared to the Artemis shots? Looks awesome, doesn't hold up in real life though. Spoiler alert, it's about the dynamic range of real cameras. You can do anything you want in your program, but if you want the real deal, let's have a look at how real cameras work. When the sun hits the moon, that rock is as bright as opening the curtains after binge-watching 4 seasons of your favorite show, and you think it's still night, but it's actually a bright summer day. If you want to see the craters, you have to stop down your exposure. Those stars, they are way too faint to hit the sensor at that setting. Same thing here in my living room. I can either see details outside or inside. When I expose for the sky, there's not much else visible inside, especially when no light hits. No sensor on Earth can do that. Now imagine that in space, where there are no walls that create this nice bounce lighting. So here in Blender, I'm just changing those values to look similar to the Artemis photos. Increase sun brightness by a lot. Lower stars and Earth light intensities. And now we can use the exposure value to expose either for the dark side or the light side. To achieve an even more realistic look, we have to do some post-processing. So let's open up the Compositor. Change the viewport to always show the composited image. Add bloom and fog. And use the exposure as a driver for the strengths. I will also add some sensor noise that gets also triggered when we crank up the exposure, since a higher ISO will also boost those noise values that become visible when you boost the signal. We will also use a slightly larger volume for the polar lights, the Aurora Borealis. We use a noise pattern combined with a Voronoi to recreate those wave-like patterns. And we will use a second noise map combined with a ramp of the Z value to mask out the poles. Now add some color, et voila! Last but not least, we'll create two empties to tilt the Earth axis. It's about 23.5 degrees. We can use a second empty to rotate the Earth around its Z-axis. Alright, that looks good. Now let's do the same for the Moon and tweak the values until it looks good. I tried my best, but in the end, there's just so much going on in the atmosphere and I'm not a meteorologist. The ozone layer influences the colors and the blue values are getting absorbed first. That's why we get those beautiful sunsets. Temperature and dust particles make a difference too. This is why a sunrise looks different from a sunset. So let's just animate those values for each camera to achieve what we're looking for. And now, let's hit render. So be honest, when we push the exposure to a more physically correct value, we add this sensor grid and the lens fog and bloom. It looks pretty damn cool, right? The final polish happened in Photoshop. In the end, 3D is always a team effort between the engine and post-production. So let's hit render again and see if we can come up with a cool looking animation and if our GPU can handle this. The edge of the visible universe is your limit now. And the VRAM of your GPU. Wasn't that nice? The best part is, once you understand how light and aperture work in deep space, you can apply it anywhere, even in your interior renders. Use strong intensities and control the camera. It'll look way more cinematic instantly. That's the final boss. Not gonna lie, this video took way longer to make than I expected. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment. Space is cold, dark, and technically a nightmare. Exactly my kind of thing. If you're a nerd like me and you want to see how to recreate the double slit interference pattern in Blender, check out this video.